Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Discover New Music podcast from Pelt Music. We will be talking today with Miss Vincent, who have just put out their debut album, A Funeral for Youth, and you can check out their most recent single, Roseline, on our Discover New Music playlist over on Spotify. Before we have a chat with Alex from Miss Vincent, just need to remind you, as always, please do follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt, and we're on Instagram and Twitter at Full Pelt Music. And if you are watching the video edition of the podcast on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the latest editions of the podcast. Welcome everyone to the Discover New Music podcast from Full Pelt Music. We're pleased to be joined today by Alex Marshall, who's the frontman, vocalist, rhythm guitarist for the hot new rock band Miss Vincent. We've recently reviewed their debut album, A Funeral for Youth, which you can read on our website, and please do check out that album wherever you stream your music, or preferably purchase your music. Thank you, Alex, for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, mate. I'm doing good. This moment has been coming for so long now that honestly, I'm just so glad that it's finally here.
Yeah, so we'll talk a bit about the history of the band, because our Discover New Music podcast is designed for people that perhaps aren't familiar with the band and obviously want to check out some new music. So we always like to start off with a question around the origins of the band. So how did Miss Vincent get together? What is the origin story for the band?
So, I was in some terrible bands growing up. As everyone is when you're 14 and know only about 3 chords. I mean, I still know only 3 chords. Maybe I know 4 now. But anyway, I was in a metal band for a few years because, as we all do, we kind of discover bands, get obsessed with them, and then kind of, you move on to something else. So I was in a metal band for a couple of years, and for a whole myriad of reasons, I left that band. And I still wanted to play music. I'm the biggest. Well, that's probably making a claim that I can't back up, but I'm a massive Ramones obsessive. I love the Ramones. I've got a big ass Ramones tattoo on my arm. I've been to I've even been to New York to go and see Joey Ramone Place and stuff like that. And I have some great stories about being in New York and meeting people that were involved with the Ramones and stuff like this. So anyway, punk rock was it's basically such a big part of me that I came out being in a metal band and I was like, God, I really want to play punk rock again. And the trouble is that, this was in 2011 when, pop punk was huge. Pop punk was really starting to kind of dominate the rock and roll airwaves at the time. And I've got nothing against it. It's just I don't particularly connect with playing that style of rock and roll, and so I really wanted to start something that sort of paid homage to the Ramones, and I'm a huge Alkaline Trio fan, totally obsessed with them as well. Big Green Day fan. I wanted that kind of classic element of punk rock to take the center stage again, fast, sad songs. I love Bad Religion, so I wanted harmonies and stuff like this. So I was trying to percolate exactly what I was trying to do. Put a bunch of feelers out, and basically nothing happened for ages. I spent a year trying to start this band, and then eventually through some band forming website, I met Laurie, who's our guitarist. He was studying at the ACM in Guildford. And this is when I was still living down in Hampshire. We got together, we bonded over Alkaline Trio, NoFX, the Misfits, all these bands that just, had dominated us growing up and that we loved. And we really hit it off. And so, we started looking for a drummer. That took ages. Drummers are unicorn shit, man. They just do not exist. Everyone wants to play guitar. It's so difficult to learn the drums because they're so loud. Anyway, we eventually found Jack. He was also at the ACM, and Laurie kind of, got in contact with him. And I had this friend called Daisy who, we talked about doing something together for ages. And our kind of big point of contact between each other was like My Chemical Romance, because they're still one of the greatest bands ever as well.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that to start with, and we used to practice in my living room of my apartment. And like at this stage, Laurie didn't even have a guitar amp. He was playing through this like Line 6 pedal board that I'd hooked up this active stage monitor so that he could hear himself play, and it was like super Toy Town. But through some of the contacts I'd had, we got our first tour. It was like a proper toilet tour. As a side note, I actually met my future wife on that tour, so it was like significant for a number of reasons.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And so we agreed to do that, and then 2 weeks beforehand, Daisy decided that she didn't really fancy kind of committing to a rock and roll band, and decided to leave. So that kind of left us in a bad position. I played bass for about 6 months, so we carried on as a 3-piece. It was fine, but it didn't really give us the opportunity to do what we wanted with the music. Right. So we eventually put out the call for a bass player, and then in early 2013, Owen joined, and that's basically the first sort of iteration of Miss Vincent when we released our first EP, Creepy. Obviously, since then it's changed a lot. We've developed our music and our personalities, and in some cases our musicianship. I can't really say that I'm much of a musician, really, but the other guys definitely have. Jack, obviously, Jack left the band a few years back, and we got Nate, our current drummer, to join us, which I sort of stole him from another band. But that was fun. And yeah, so that's kind of us, man. We've been touring and recording and writing music ever since.
Yeah, so it's been a longish road for you guys to get to where you are, but obviously you're at a point now where you can put out what we consider a stunning record that's come out.
That's funny you say.
You preceded that with a number of singles. We picked up on a couple of them and included them in our Discover New Music playlist over on Spotify, one of which was your most recent single, Rosaline. So just wanted to ask you about that track, and just again, how did that track come about? What's the meaning behind the track? Because we've really enjoyed Rosaline.
Rosaline's it's a funny one. Lyrically, it sort of came about from me sitting around reading this big, thick book of Shakespeare's works that I've got. Like everybody, I studied them in school and wasn't really paying attention because that's kind of what you do in school. I really wish that I had, though, because sort of in the years since, I've connected with a lot of the plays and a lot of the kind of themes and stuff like that. And occasionally I'll just sit down and just open it at a play and just like read a few scenes and just kind of like, use that to kind of spark my imagination a little bit. And the one that I opened it up to was Romeo and Juliet. Now, Rosaline is a character in Romeo and Juliet, but you never see her and you never hear from her. She is kind of Romeo's initial love interest. And she is in an indirect way the reason that he meets Juliet, because he wants to go to this party to basically try and get on Rosaline, ends up meeting Juliet, and we all know the rest of the story. So, yeah. But I was fascinated by kind of the symbolism of her. She symbolizes Romeo's loss of innocence. That kind of like naive, sort of flower of love that you have when you're young, where everything's really uncomplicated. You're just like, you see somebody and like all of a sudden like your entire essence just kind of crumbles, and you're like, how am I ever going to live knowing that this person is in the world? Do you know what I mean? Like, yes. when you're young, you're kind of untainted by the slings of arrows of outrageous fortune. You know what I mean? Like you're so pure. And Rosaline for me always signified the kind of transition from being this pure, naive young person to the Romeo that we see at the end of the play. And it kind of just got me thinking about my own life, how I had changed as I grew up. And it was making me think of all these, girls that I was obsessed with, and I was like 12, just that kind of young love thing. And that kind of got me thinking about the wider picture and how we kind of all grow up. And as you go through life, like shit just happens, man. And all of a sudden you're like, God, I kind of miss the kid I used to be, because I used to be pure and innocent and naive and this kind of lovely thing. And and hey presto, there was the song. You know, it all sort of just came out. It was great. I mean, it's like the dream lyric writing process. Now, bizarrely, as a side note, that song I originally recorded double the speed that you hear on the album. Okay. I wrote it as a super fast punk track. I was listening to a lot of Against Me, and I was like, you know, let's really ramp this up. And we discarded it because it was crap. But then one day Laurie sent me a demo that he'd made of it where he'd slowed it all down. And that's where you get that kind of like that toe tapping, head nodding feeling of almost like pseudo country almost that you get in the verse. And then you have this kind of like big chorus that reminded me of like the Gaslight anthem all of a sudden. Do you know what I mean? And he just basically, you know, kind of changed the song, even though all he'd done is slowed it down and re-recorded the guitars and the drums. So yeah, and then that was it. We were like, oh, it makes sense now. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's funny how things can work out that way sometimes. And yeah, it fits really well on the record, Funeral for You, that came out September 17th. So again, for fans or listeners of the podcast that perhaps aren't fans yet, that perhaps don't know the band, what should they expect from that record as a whole? What is a Funeral for You for people?
Big ass punk rock anthems. Is the way that I describe it. Like, you know, when we were writing the album, I was listening to a lot of like original wave rock and roll. You know, I love Johnny Cash. I love like so many of the bands and artists from that era, like, you know, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, like all these people that, you know, modern music fans probably would know one of their songs because they've got really famous songs that have been used across popular culture, but probably wouldn't know them from Adam otherwise. And that's basically what you get. You get on the album, you get big punk rock songs that have this kind of undertone of the golden era of rock and roll. So, you know, it's not rockabilly. That's a dirty word that bands don't like to be associated with for some reason. But yeah, it's kind of like, imagine Green Day covering Chuck Berry, or imagine Alkaline Trio singing a Johnny Cash song. That's kind of the way that we try and communicate it to people. Yeah,
and you know, it's all wrapped up in this fantastic package that works really, really well, including, I want to touch on the artwork. So the Melancholy Theatre artwork that you have on the record, and for fans that were pre-ordering the album from your website, certain packages included things like Miss Vincent branded popcorn, for example. Where did the you know, concept for the artwork and, you know, the additional merch and everything, you know, come from? Because it looks fantastic.
Oh, thank you, man. I mean, first of all, the artwork was done by this incredible artist from California called Mark DeSalvo. Now, every punk rock fan will probably have seen his artwork on an album at some point. They just might not know his name. But we'll come back to him in a minute. The whole idea of using a movie theater came from, you know, those kind of old movies, you know, like American Graffiti and Rebel Without a Cause and The Outsiders and all these kind of like classic 50s greaser flicks, basically. You know, even in Grease, they go to a drive-in movie, you know. So like going to the movies is a big part of my upbringing. It's sort of that one of those sort of constant themes in growing up that has been there since 1952 or whatever it is, when, you know, they became really popular. And well, I mean, they've been popular for years before that, but, you know, they became sort of a part of teenage culture, like really, really much in the 50s. And that's kind of where we got the idea from. We were just like, you know, it's in all these great movies that we love. It's in so many things that that have percolated into our kind of influences for this album. And it kind of worked because, you know, the whole idea of the album is that it's like, you know, saying goodbye to your youth, you know, and there are so many movies about coming of age, you know. And so we just kind of went with it, you know, the popcorn, the artwork, you know. We loved the idea of the Melancholy Theatre because it relates to the title. In the title track, A Funeral for Youth, the last line of the chorus is a melancholy funeral for youth. And so we were like, cool, it's the Melancholy Theatre, great. And then we were like, right, okay, cool. So we know we want a movie theatre frontage. You know, who could we get? Like, we didn't want to have that kind of real modern feel to it. We wanted that kind of like classic, timeless, like clearly been worked on with love. And we were looking at our albums that we loved, and there's this amazing band on Fat Records called the Bomb Pops, and they released this album called Death in Venice Beach. And the artwork for it is fantastic. I mean, it's a great album in general. I love the Bomb Pops, but the artwork in particular had always stuck out to me. Whenever it came up on Spotify, I was like, that is fantastic artwork. So we looked into it, and turns out it was this guy, Mark DeSalvo, who has done, I mean, his like portfolio is like a who's who of Southern California rock and roll. Like, he's done stuff for No Effects, he's done stuff for Pulley, he's done for Lagwagon, he's done stuff for like Tony Sly. Like, I was amazed. I couldn't believe that I'd spent my whole life looking at this guy's artwork, and I only just found out his name. And so we contacted him on a bit of a whim, expecting him to be like, yeah, sure, that'll be 20 grand, because he's this, behemoth of alternative punk rock artwork. And turns out Mark is the nicest guy on the planet, as well as being one of the world's greatest artists. He is the nicest dude on the planet. He was like finding out a little bit more about us so that he could like, make himself approachable as an artist. Because, Mark's just a punk rock guy, and that's what I love about the punk rock community, is that you have this guy that's done all these amazing things. And yet, he was into the idea. And so we made it work, and he made it work. And he just like, I can't imagine anybody else having done it. I love the artwork so much. He really put the time, the thought, the effort, the artistry that it needed. And I genuinely think it's the perfect complement to the music. He's such a great dude. He's been so supportive of us since then. And, if we ever do anything else, there's only one person that's going to be doing the artwork for it. That's for sure.
And it's like you say, the artwork sometimes can become almost as iconic as the music for certain albums. And you can tell both musically and, with the artwork that surrounds it, that A Funeral for Youth, has had the time, care and the love put into it. And it really does come across when you see it and you listen to it. Obviously, you said the origins of the band date back to kind of 2012-ish. So that's almost a decade ago, really. So how does it feel for you now when you look at the piece of art that you've created and you're putting out to the world? How does it feel to finally be putting a full-length album out? How does that sit for you?
I mean, the number one feeling is relief, to be honest. Considering we've been a band, like our first show was 4th of May 2012, so next year it'll be 10 years. Now, we've only done 3 EPs and an album in that time, which is not a lot for 10 years. And there's obviously millions of reasons for that, many of them financial. Like, we always try to be DIY as possible, but that comes with some serious cost implications. Releasing music is really expensive, touring is really expensive, recording is really expensive. And so it's been a bit of a fight, to be honest, to get to this point, doing it the way we've done it. The reason that we did it the way we've done it is because we wanted to do what we wanted to do. We didn't want to join an existing scene and try and ride a wave. We wanted to carve our own path. And that's I know that's completely mind-numbingly cliche to say, but in reality, there aren't a lot of bands that sound like us right now. And there haven't really been for 10 years. There's loads in America, but there's virtually none in the UK. So being a UK band doing an American, essentially what most people consider an American thing, is hard. So to get to the point that we found great people to work with, we're working with Silent Cult, who are releasing the album, and they are absolutely fantastic. They get us, we wanted to connect with people that get us and understand what we want to do. I won't, bore you with the stories of other labels, like huge labels that we've had conversations with that just said things that made my skin crawl. Things like, we don't sign bands, we sign influencers that make music. Like, are you kidding me? No, sorry. If that's the world that you're living in, I don't want to be a part of it, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, man, I'm relieved, I'm ecstatic, I just really want people to hear it. I really want people to hear it. We love what we do, and you know what? Like, if we're going by the law of averages, most bands only ever make one album, and that's fine with us, because if this is the last piece of music that I ever record, if the bus hits me tomorrow, then I'm good, man. Like, this album, I'm so proud of it that I almost don't care if people like it, almost.
But you know, talking to you and obviously experiencing the album and you know the journey you've been on, you know, it's clear the you know the passion that you have for, as you say, doing things the right way. You know, perhaps passing on certain opportunities that you've had because you want to follow the right way, and you know that does come with risk. But also, you know, certain bands have done it that way and been well rewarded for it. You guys have put in a lot of effort. You've obviously had time to hone your craft out on the road, and obviously live music is massively important for any band, especially, you know, young bands trying to break through. There hasn't been much opportunity for that for the last 18 months for obvious reasons, but you guys have got out and played a handful of shows. You recently supported Creeper, and you've got 2 shows lined up as special album release shows. What can you tell the fans? Where are those shows? And what can fans expect from them shows from you guys?
Well, it's bizarre. I was actually having quite a long, protracted conversation about those shows earlier today in terms of kind of making plans for them. We're about 6 weeks out from them now. The first one is October 27th at the Joiners in Southampton, which is the greatest music venue of all time. It doesn't matter where you live in the UK. At some point in your life, you must go to the Joiners. Like, you know, people talk about CBGBs in the US. We've got the Joiners. You know, everyone's played there. Oasis, Green Day, NoFX, Ed Sheeran, Coldplay, like The Verve. Like, it doesn't matter who you are as a massive rock and roll star. You've probably played the Joiners.
Yeah.
So you know, that's like our spiritual home, really. So to be doing one of our album release shows there is very, very special for us. So that's October 27th at the Joiners in Southampton. We've got so much cool stuff planned for these shows, man. I can't really give too much away because then it won't be a surprise when they happen. But you know, it's gonna be a real spectacle. That's what we want. You know, we've gone with the whole kind of movie theater theme for the album, and we want a production and a performance that backs that up. You know, and then the other one we're playing is the day after, October 28th, which is a Friday, in Signature Brew, which is in London. And yeah, that'll be pretty much the same production, pretty much the same show, but just in a different location in the Big Smoke itself. Yeah. So, you know, London shows are a weird one, man, for people in bands. And this is maybe something you've heard before, but it's something I hear a lot, is that London shows are important because it's London. Yeah. But actually, a lot of the time, you know, I've been to a lot of shows in London because I used to live right nearby, and the crowds kind of suck sometimes. You know, they've got that kind of whole London elitism thing, like, we don't need to go too mental. You know, we get this stuff all the time. Like, you know, that we've got this kind of sensory overload where cool stuff happens so often that it's not even really that cool anymore. You know, we've been very lucky, I think, on the whole. We've always loved playing in London, but you know, it's gonna be a party, man. We can't wait. We haven't done a UK headline show for so long now that I just can't wait. You know, even before the pandemic, we did a headline tour in Germany that in February 2020. And our tour before that was late in 2019 with As It Is, who are great friends of ours in Europe as well. So we haven't played in the UK for so long. It's crazy. But yeah, man, they're going to be amazing. Honestly, if anybody lives anywhere near those 2 cities, you've got to come and hang out with us. We will make it worth your while, and we will show you a great time.
Yeah, I fully encourage anyone to pop along to them shows. They, you know, are set to be something very special. You know, and after those 2 shows, I assume there'll be more tour plans to come. You probably can't tell exactly where and when, but you know, fans should hopefully expect to see you on the road, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have a lot of plans. Obviously, I can't really talk about them yet. You know, the other thing about being in a band like ours is, you know, there's always going to be somebody on a bigger label with a bigger manager with a better agent, you know? So there's some stuff in the pipeline that if it comes off, I will literally be able to die happy, honestly. Like, but obviously I can't tell you what it is because we haven't got it yet, but we will be touring. We will absolutely be touring as soon as we can, wherever we can. We're making plans to go back to Europe. We're making plans to go around the UK. You know, Scotland, for example, is a place that we love playing that we barely ever get up to because it is on the polar opposite end of the country from us. But yeah, man, we will be touring as much as we possibly can past these shows, but obviously we want to focus as much as we can on the release shows for now because, yeah, the album's out. So, you know, learn the words, come down and sing them with us.
Yeah, definitely. The future is very bright for Miss Vincent. Listeners can check the band out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Miss Vincent Band. I believe that's right. And
that's correct.
Yeah, fans definitely check out this band and get out on the roads. Alex, thank you very much for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners today?
Not really. Just, you know, listen to our record, give it a chance. Yeah. You'll love it. It's great. And come see us, of course.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you very much, Alex. Thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for tuning in to the Discover New Music podcast from Full Pelt Music. There we have it, another episode of the Discover New Music podcast in the books. Great having the chat with Miss Vincent. A reminder, you can check out their single Rosaline on our Discover New Music playlist over on Spotify, and you can check the band out on their social media channels at Miss Vincent Band. Please check us out on our social media channels to keep up to date with the latest from Full Pelt Music. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Instagram and Twitter at Full Pelt Music. And please, on YouTube, if you're watching our video edition, hit that subscribe button and we'll see you next time.